Hello, everyone, and welcome to Arno Illic's channel, the author of The World According to AI. My name is Cindy Bajla, and I'm an executive coach who works with leaders to help them make decisions with clarity and confidence. I've had the privilege of knowing Arno for over 8 years, so I know him really well, and I want you to know him as the wonderful human that he is, with his rich, exciting, interesting life outside of being an author. So welcome, Arno.
Thank you.
I think the readers who have read the book and or those who will be reading the books in the future would love to know a little bit about you. Tell us about your life. Who is Arno?
Geez, I still don't know. No, I'm just kidding. Um, uh, I came over as an immigrant, and people used to make fun of me and so on because of my accent and those were the kids. The parents were far more destructive in the way that they addressed me, and I kind of got that because coming from Germany right after the war, people still had feelings about the war, and their friends or brothers got killed in the war. Um, but then again, nobody ever really thought about it from the other perspective, that, you know what, a lot of the people that went to war didn't want to go to war and didn't believe in what was going on. I had such an uncle. But what it taught me really was that we just can't presume things. And I happen to be fortunate because I'm white. And, once my accent was gone, I was accepted like anybody else. But there are people of color who cannot shed their color, and they will always remain sort of different. But that doesn't mean that they're any worse than we are. They're human beings. And so that was kind of the direction that I started to take. We had a lot of friends who were religious leaders and so on from my dad's side. And they would come over and visit or stay overnight and so on at our place. And I got to realizing that these people are just like ordinary people. They joke around, they have fun, they drink, they do all those kinds of things that we do. The only difference is they have a different profession. And so I started taking that into work with me. And then later on, when I got married, um, it, it was, when you first meet and that sparks fly and, oh my God, this is the one. And yes, she's my fairy princess. And all of that stuff went on. Yes, indeed. But it's not sustainable. And we have to recognize that love is far more than just our little feelings inside about, things bubbling up. It's about doing things for the other person, doing the little things, like washing the dishes, washing the floor, just that there is no, yeah, this is your role, this is my role kind of thing. We're partners. So everything is our role. And so, and the same thing when the kids started coming along, of course, there was a difference of opinion because my parents raised me differently than Norma's parents raised her differently. And so you look at that and say, well, I turned out okay, so what my parents did must be right. So therefore, they should be raised this way. Failing to understand at the time that no, they have their own path in life. It has nothing to do with you. You're there to provide them with guidance and sustenance. They will take their own path, whether you like it or not. And I had this conversation with my brother because he was a musician. And my dad couldn't stand the fact that he was going around playing in clubs and so on. And I mean, the guy is brilliant. He has all this education and he's wasting it away on here. And I kept pointing out to him, Dad, it's what they love to do, And so I brought that kind of thinking in when my kids were growing up too, is instead of saying when they're aspiring to something, no, that's crazy talk. It's like, okay, how can we make this happen? and so um, I'm blessed with having kids that uh, are of the same mindset, basically, that they understand who they are to degrees. Um, they also taught me about leadership, because um, it can be sometimes frustrating when people aren't listening. And here you catch yourself demanding that they listen to you. Well, why? What makes you so special that they have to listen to you? And that's the same thing I found when I was out on the floor leading people in their various tasks. It was like you have to let them express themselves. Sometimes that expression doesn't coincide with your thoughts of how you think they should be expressing themselves. But the thing is by opening up and listening, you actually get to learn a lot more by watching their facial expression. You get to learn a lot more. When somebody says, "Oh, there's nothing going on, I'm okay," the way that they say it, there is, and then you can challenge them and say, "Oh, what's that about?" What when you said everything is okay, but your face was sad, what was that about? And you can kind of bring them out that way. Um, and I try to tell people too that listening is important, but don't forget, you're not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. You're not going to fix their problems. You're there to listen. They might get insight because you're listening, but that's different from telling them what they shouldn't be doing. And it's the same thing with the kids. Sometimes they get frustrated because, here's a word problem. Dad, what's the answer? And I'd say, well, what's the question? you know, what are they looking for? And how would you solve that? So, and I used to do the same thing years later when I was in labor relations, and I was teaching people about how to interpret a collective agreement. I would say to them, now I'm going to show you that you already know everything that there is to know about labor relations. And my presentation would be a lot about questioning and getting the feedback and realizing or they're realizing that, yeah, just common sense, most of it, like that.
Thank you. It's interesting. I've known you for so long, but there were snippets that I wasn't actually aware of. Um, for anyone wondering, Arno and I, the first time we met, we were serving on the same board. We both reside in the region of Peel, which is one of the most diverse places in Canada, one of the many. And it's been an interesting exercise listening to all the influences that have shaped who you have become. And of course, then there's so much congruence with our work, both from an HR consulting and practice perspective. So what would you say, Arno, is the most important influence in your life that has kind of seeped through in the book?
Oh my goodness. So there's quite a few of them.
Okay.
I had, and actually I'm writing another book on leadership now. And one of the things that I point out in there is the first time I went into managing people, and I had a superintendent of the plant who used to come by all the time, and he'd ask questions. That's all he would do. And I never had an answer. So I thought, maybe I should start looking around and start accumulating some answers. And that got me to thinking about certain things and how I want to arrange the department and all of that kind of stuff. And his influence actually had me thinking in a different way on leadership. And so from that perspective, it was probably the most influential. My dad was a great influence on me too. And even though we were kind of like oil and water and used to argue all the time, it was later on when he came to live with us because my mother had passed. Um, that I really got to understand where he was coming from. You know, him telling us, no, you need to be an engineer, or you need to do something where your skills are transferable. It's because my dad never had transferable skills as such, not without learning a different language. And so all of his thinking came from that perspective. Like, if you can be a doctor here, you can be a doctor anywhere, kind of thing. Or if engineers are needed all over the place, that kind of thing. And that's why I guess he was so frustrated with my brother, because musicians don't make money and all of that kind of stuff. Um, which is kind of funny in a way that things work, or ironic rather. My brother is a doctor in education. And unfortunately, my father never got to see that, but he did see that he transitioned from being a musician to a high school principal. So that made him happy. But yeah, and um, Norma, my wife, basically taught me compassion. She taught me giving of yourself. She's always out there volunteering and doing those kinds of things. And the kids, essentially, it was being able to look at different points of view, and trying to understand what is important to them,
Mhm.
not to me, but to them. And so then I take that into leadership roles as well.
That is incredible. Now, for someone who met in the work context, I have to tell you, one of my favorite things about Arno is actually his wife. I know he wouldn't be surprised, and Norman would be
Yeah.
surprised. His first book, can you tell us a little bit about what a
Oh.
romantic you are?
Well, it's called Letters in the Lunch Bag, and it's still out there. But the thing about it is, years ago when we were both working, I would write little notes into Norma's lunch bag. And it was just a way of, she's eating her lunch, she has a little bit of something to read. And at some point, I thought, you know what? I think for her birthday, I'm going to put all this, compile it all together into a book. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, "This is such a great idea. Why don't you publish it?" Okay, well, maybe I'll do that. And so what I did was I got the book, I ordered 100 copies. We had a big celebration for Norma's birthday, and I gave out all these copies to friends of hers along with Norma. And so it's basically a book about love, right? And how I look at love, and how what I see in my partner, and just all the wonderful things about her. But there's pieces in there about the family and so on. So you get to know a little bit about us.
Yes. Honestly, one of the reasons I am doing this with Arno is because he's one of the kindest, sweetest human beings I have known for the last 8 years. And honestly, it's such a privilege to meet people who are so open-minded, so giving and generous. And if you were to, well, maybe you are tuning in from our community, but across the globe, I think it is one thing to appreciate that somebody is an author dedicating to sharing their ideas. But generosity that has seeped through everything that Arno has done is exemplary. And it has been a privilege to watch and learn from that. You will.
You're making my head swell.
That's okay. You can pay me after. So so those that don't know Arno yet, I think one of the things that you will see in his book is his style of writing is not your typical author. So he is not preaching and telling you what to do. It's, I know in his best humility, he calls it a ramble, but you will find what you need to find. I think where we started the series was with Arno sharing his insights about nuggets, and you can borrow what you need to improve your life. We hope that by hearing more about Arno's life and the influences that shaped him, you have a taste of the experiences that have made this wonderful human. When you read these, if you have any opinions, he's a very open-minded person. I think he has told me he really wants to hear back from anyone who reads the book. If you've read the book, appreciated it, please share it with other people who this may also resonate with. You can find it on Amazon, Goodreads, and at Barnes & Noble stores in the US. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Arno, for sharing you with us.
Just before we leave, I want to thank you. And I have known Sandeep, as she said, for about 8 years. She is such a professional, and in every which way that you can think of. Her coaching style is amazing. And she deals mostly with executive coaching. So if you have a need for an executive coach, please use her. If you have a need for public speaking, she's the one. She can tell you all kinds of stories herself. In fact, I'm waiting for her to write a book.
You'll be waiting for a while. The decision needed to write a book. Oh, I have such respect for that. But thank you so much for your kind words. And
Thank
thank
you.
you, listeners who have tuned in. We hope you enjoyed the book and we wish you well.
Thank you.